Hello and welcome to EntertainGents. This will be our second episode, episode 2 for A Quiet Place Part 2. I am joined, as always, by my good friend and co-host, Connor Berry. Connor, how are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
I'm doing excellent. It's been a while since we recorded one of these. It's good to be back in the saddle, though. What have you been watching or playing lately, or listening to?
I did finish Invincible.
Very good.
I obviously watched it when it was actually on, and then I rewatched it with our friend Hazen, and I wasn't really like watching it super in depth the second time, but I did get a little bit more out of it, and it's just such a good show.
We'll for sure have to do an episode on that show.
Yeah, I could definitely see us doing one soon. I know we have like a lot more of those staple movies we want to do, but Invincible's definitely been a good show. Been playing a little bit more of Ghost of Tsushima. I definitely want to get around to beating that, but I feel like I've had so many shows that I like watched and finished, and movies that I've like blown through. Obviously, like the last like 2 years, not 2 years, I guess. Too. Well, last year and a half.
Yeah, I was just saying the last 18 months. I was gonna say the exact same thing.
Yeah,
I watched a ton of stuff for the first time in the past year and a half, especially in part thanks to being in quarantine for a year.
I'm not sure how you feel about like watching and like binging certain shows like that have been on for a long time or were on for a long time. Like I know I did that with The Sopranos, where it's like there's 7 seasons. I went from like 99 to like 06 and 07 or something like that. I think 07 because I think season 7 has like 2 parts technically. So I think it's 6. I think season 6 has 2 parts. So technically there's 7, but it's really, they call it 6, part 1, part 2.
Oh, weird.
But yeah, so it just feels like when you're watching that show, even though like there's only like, so many episodes per season, like 10 or between 10 and 15, I think is what it always was. But it just feels so long, like sitting there and watching an hour-long episode, like 10 hours per season. So it took me a while to finish it, but like sitting there and watching it, like and watching how like his kids went from being like 12-year-olds to being like adults by the end of the show. It just felt like draining almost in a sense. Like I get that way when I watch Breaking Bad again. Like anytime I rewatch Breaking Bad,
it's hard to just plow through stuff. You almost need to force yourself to like do like 1 or 2 a day, maybe.
Yeah.
To make sure that you're always wanting more. That way you're not getting burned out or bored of what you're watching. Yeah.
I think the hard thing is too, like on like Breaking Bad or The Boys or something that like, is like kind of different. I feel like Sopranos is like very great for the first 4 seasons, and then after you watch like that, once you're like start watching season 5, you're just kind of like, I'm really getting tired of this, because it's the most like what you just said, where it's like you start getting tired of it because it's the same thing over and over and over again. It's like The Walking Dead, where it's like you watch it and you're like, this is a great show, and then you're just like, you start watching it and you're like, I feel like they did this like a season ago.
Yeah,
like they did this like literally 3 episodes ago.
If it was our job to write, I don't know if we could keep that premise fresh for that long, over that many years, or that many episodes.
I think it's just like more about like taking time with your plots. I know like funny enough, the first couple of seasons of Arrow did a really good job about that. Like really taking time to develop the plot that was like at play, or even Lost did a great job at that early on too, where like you had like the others for so long, or like these like mysterious, like what are they, like that's kind of creepy, like are they like, do they have powers, like what are they? And so like I feel like really taking the time to develop your plot isn't a bad thing. Like no one's wanting you to rush that plot, but you have certain shows like
too slow.
Definitely don't want it to be too slow, but there's ways you can make it be slow while also being intriguing and like kind of creepy almost in a way. I feel like you really have to play more on the scarier side of things, because like you have to make it unknown, and so the unknown's always going to be a little scary. So you always like Lost is kind of like when you first watching it, I remember especially as a kid, it's kind of creepy. It is a little bit
like, it seemed just like, oh no, they're trapped, until the end of that first episode when you see trees in the forest being knocked down, you hear those weird loud sounds. You're like, what is in the forest that could possibly be doing that?
Right.
As a kid, I was like, oh, there must be a dinosaur on the island.
Yeah.
I remember thinking that.
And so I still want to do like an episode of Sopranos definitely one day, but like it's definitely one of those shows that I think everyone should at least watch a little bit of, even if you don't watch the whole show. I just wanted to watch the whole show just to say I'd done it.
People say that about The Wire too, and I can't get through the first few episodes of The Wire.
Dude, I can't after watching The Sopranos. Like, I already powered through that. I don't know if I can do The Wire. I might do it maybe like in a few years once I have the strength to do it again. But it's
that's me watching Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, dude, the older you get, the more like those things.
I've still never seen Return of the King because
it just feels like a job.
I saw Two Towers and I'm like, can't watch this. I can't watch another one. I was like 6 years ago too. So I still watched Return of the King. But
it's tough.
That's why I think it's really cool that we're in this spot the past 3 or so years where studios are learning. I think it's kind of started with Stranger Things, where they learned that you don't need to do 20 episode seasons. You don't need to have a show that has no defined end. We're getting a lot more 8 or 13 episode shows. We're getting a lot more limited run series that have a set end, like the upcoming the Obi-Wan show is like that. The Marvel shows so far,
the Marvel shows
have been that way. I feel like Breaking Bad kind of started that, where they kind of seem to have a lot more of a clear path to the end of that show than shows did at that time. So I haven't seen The Sopranos, but you're saying it sounds like Lost, where it was a great show, but they didn't have an end in mind, so this kind of went till they were forced to end it because it wasn't very good. It
just went too long. Yeah. It felt like the same thing literally all the time, and every time the show started seeming to be cool. Sorry to spoil it for you, but most of the time the bad guy that was like the new like, whoa, like what's going to happen would just be killed randomly, whether it be by Tony or whether it be by one of his, friends, one of his minions. Like, it was just always kind of like they took the big thing, even down right to the end. It kind of just ends going right back to like daily life. Like, I'm again the boss. Everything is good. I'm with my family. Everything is fine. And it kind of just ends.
And Don't Stop Believing comes on.
Yeah. I mean, everyone knows the ending. Yeah. It's like trying to spoil.
That's an iconic TV ending.
It's kind of like trying to spoil, Darth Vader being Luke Skywalker's father. It's like, everyone knows that, even if you've never seen Star Wars. It's just one of those things, So I went into it knowing what the ending would be. It just wasn't very thrilling. But it's still definitely worth seeing. Like, the first couple seasons definitely are worth seeing.
So we're definitely in a better spot now. Like, think of The Boys. We have 2 seasons of that so far. And some are better than others, but I would say that show doesn't have any bad episodes.
Yeah, even like shows that like technically got canceled, but like Daredevil, even if they never bring the character back, it would upset me a little bit, but like it's like still like I would be happier to have what we have now than never have had it, because it's still like you can kind of make the ending up in your head. Like, they kind of go back to it, but like there's no like definitive ending, like kind of like what you were talking about before. There's no like, this is the end, he's retired now, blah blah blah, like and roll credits. It's just kind of like things go back to how they were, and which is fine. Like, it's fine sometimes.
Always have to see a character through until the end of their career or the end of their life.
Yeah.
But so as far as what I've been doing, I've been playing mods for the original Doom, 1993 Doom. I don't know why. I just kind of got into it randomly. I've just been downloading and playing different mods for that game.
Yeah,
I know. It takes up a lot of time.
I see you on there a lot. We both got Destiny 2, so I'm sure we'll be hopping back into that rabbit hole.
Yeah. I'm sure we'll do some sort of content with that at some point, but like I played just Destiny 2 and just on PC. I played hundreds of hours of that game. But me going back to it after like a year or so hiatus, I'm so confused and lost. Like, I can't even imagine what it's like being a completely new player to that game. Like, how many people have tried to play it and just bounce off of it.
It's kind of just like WoW, I think. Like, you either just get it or you don't.
Yeah.
And I think that's just kind of like they're diehard with that. But
it's free to play, so
yeah,
I'm sure they have enough players.
It's definitely upsides. But
so anyway,
I think a good Subway, eat fresh. A
good Subway.
I think a definite good segue into this is going back to like the no definitive endings. And this movie's ending kind of ends like the first one, where you're just kind of like right at the... They know how to end a movie because it almost pisses you off at the end. I remember like we were walking out, we were all kind of like saying stuff we liked about the movie, but at the same time, like we're all kind of pissed off. Like, it just ended? Like, it's just done? Like, because you're like, you want to see what's going to happen. And to me, that's still like a great way to end a movie, is kind of pissing people off, because it's like, I guarantee you everyone that we went and saw that movie with, even though some of the people we went and saw it with were stupid and had complaints about it, even though it was still a great movie, will go and see the third one when it comes out because they want to see what happens. And so like, I've
heard people say, and I agree, that if your biggest complaint when a movie ends is that you want more, then it did something right.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think this movie, again, does the things that the first movie did good. There's some new things that I didn't really like, but I had no complaints that I had in the first movie that are now back in the second movie.
Yeah.
Like, you kind of have the annoying kid trope that's like in any alien movie or monster movie when there's a young kid in it. I really feel like the son in this movie causes way too much unneeded trouble. Like, so much unneeded trouble is just because he gets up to stupid antics, and like...
I felt like he kind of got the short end of the stick as far as just stuff to do in this movie. He played a role, he came back a little in the end, but for the most part, I think he was probably the least interesting character in this. I don't know who would really disagree with that.
They definitely do a good job with the daughter, I'll say, because I've never really felt too irritated by her.
No.
A little bit in the first one, maybe, but like it's still warranted because like there's kind of like John Krasinski's obviously just quiet in the first one. He doesn't like, but not just to say like obviously he's quiet because he can't talk, but like he does very little to communicate with anyone. He's always by himself. He's very alienated because he's so worried about protecting them and so worried about the threat on hand that he doesn't have the time to do that. But like, it still kind of makes him a bad dad because he needs to be communicating with his family and still being like a dad. So like, obviously he's doing his job. He's trying to protect his family. He's trying to do everything he can to not lose another child like he had already had. But like the daughter feels like it's her fault. There's resentment there. It's kind of like just a messy situation.
To be fair, it was her fault, but...
Yeah, it was. I mean, it's kind of one of those things, though, where it's like you're still trying to have fun as a kid. Like, it's a kind of a gloomy situation here. So you're trying to find happiness where you can. And so she just kind of wanted to do that for her little sibling, was to like, hey, it's okay. Have this toy. Have fun with it. Be safe. But, you know, obviously things go wrong with it.
Did John Krasinski give him just the rocket and not the batteries, or did he
takes the whole thing away? All right. Because what happens is the daughter gives him the rocket without the batteries, and then he grabs the batteries.
Right. Okay.
So it's kind of one of those things where it's like she still knew. She didn't just hand him the batteries and everything and be like, it's going to be fine. She just handed him a toy without the batteries because she figured.
Still, in this world, you don't want to just have a useless hunk of plastic going around.
It's definitely one of those things where it's like, yeah, less, because like if he drops it, something happens, you know, you're still making a noise. I think she's had a pretty good story overall. I definitely think they're probably trying to push her to be more of like the main character, probably for the third one, I'd imagine. Yeah. If anything. But there's certain little things that like go back to the first episode that I have complaints with. So I think since we kind of started, let's start. Before we get into the complaints or likes, let's start with the overall just kind of topics of the movie that we want to touch on, like we did the first episode. If you want to hit that first. We saw this movie together last night, and I had a lot I wanted to say, but I thought let's save it for this because this will be a more genuine conversation. But I touched on a part that I liked a lot in this movie were the multiple planes of action and how they were paralleling each other. Mm-hmm. And you said that didn't really especially stand out to you, but how it splits off into three with Evelyn going to town to get medicine for the boy. I don't even know his character's name. Then it had him and the baby back at the factory. Then it had Cillian Murphy and Reagan out going to the Grizz mission. And that eventually comes back into just being
two planes of it comes back to being two planes of action when Evelyn comes back with the medicine. But the parallels between them that I liked were like when it's still quiet in each plane of action, they're both just like quietly going, you know something's about to happen, then they kind of all run into trouble at the same time. Then like she shoots the oxygen tank and then it lights on fire right when that light falls on the dock, and then that catches on fire. Then she sets off the sprinklers and it's all wet right when they're diving into the water on the docks. Then at the end they're both dealing with the monsters at the same time. And it just, I liked how they like it shows how much they put into crafting the movie before they started shooting it. And part of what I thought, sadly, was I wish that someone cared about Star Wars as much as they cared about A Quiet Place Part 2. But no, I like that a lot. And another thing that I'll let you talk was the sound design in this was also very good. It was different from the first movie, I'd say, in quite a lot of ways. But I really liked it was throughout the whole thing, but especially at the start when it was showing the first day of the monsters showing up, how it was John Krasinski and his daughter, and she's deaf, and she's deaf for real, but she's deaf in the movie too. And whenever she would be on her own, the sound would get super muffled or gone.
Yeah,
then when he would come back and touch her, it would come back. And like even me saying that to you, I just kind of got chills again because I thought that was so cool. Yeah, and really, it makes her life like even more scary. That like she has been deaf her whole life, but she can't know that she's not making sound. You know,
right?
Which we see at the end when she's opening that door to the broadcasting room and the door's creaking, but she doesn't know that because she's deaf.
Yeah, she doesn't even know the monster's there. That is something that I noticed that was really cool. I think there was a lot of points through the movie that had a lot of those moments that were like, again, like the fireworks scene that I was like really like, wow, that was really cool. There's more of them this time around, which is why I feel like I said in the last episode, like I feel like John Krasinski really probably sat back, took all of like the feedback of what everyone was saying, kind of like sat there, thought longer about it, and came back with this one and was like kind of ironed a lot of things out from the first one, specifically with some of the stuff with the sound that I really liked. There's a couple scenes which we'll get into, like the complimenting of the movie, you know, things that we liked about it and all that, but there's a couple scenes I want to touch on before, just because I think they deserve their own talking points before we get into like the overall little things that we liked about the movie. And I think you'll agree with me that the dock scene stands out probably the most.
That was really cool.
Yeah, that scene's just like, because it's very like weird at first, because you're like kind of sitting there, you're like, is it a monster? Is it a person? What's going on here? And so like he's walking on the dock, obviously gets to the point where there's a little girl, and all of a sudden the little girl,
I'm sure you were the same, where you were immediately like, that's a trap. That's a trap. That's a trap. I thought that
a little bit. I was kind of weirded out that it was a little girl. And then when I saw her face and I saw all their faces, like, again, with this movie, I really like there's just things they don't ever answer. Because it's like you're looking at all their faces, and even her face looks burnt.
What could have messed them up like that?
Yeah. And I think, like, I'm wondering, like, it immediately leads me to believe, like, is it some sort of cult? Like, what is this
Maybe
thing?
The military was trying to bomb them,
like,
and they got hurt by that. Like,
because they all look burned.
But yeah, that's another thing, is that we kind of got that vibe from when they got to the broadcasting island, that those people were
I want to touch on that towards later, like a little bit later, because I feel like that also kind of deserves its own talking point.
For sure.
But the dock scene is like, the coolest part about it is, so first off, let me say, Cillian Murphy's character is very cool in the way that I feel, again, they don't do a lot to describe him. Like, they kind of just leave it as...
I think his name's Emmett in this movie.
Yeah, Emmett. So Emmett's character is cool to me, and the reason why it's cool, and I'll let you talk about that too, but I want to say first, they kind of have his backstory there, but they never touch on it. Like, I don't know how you felt about it, but I was kind of sitting there in that scene when she was like, you're nothing like him, and they're like saying all this stuff to him. I really thought they're going to be like somehow make it like he's his brother or something like that. I thought they were going to do that. And I almost like more the fact that he was just some friend that lived in the same town as them. Because, like, it just made it more ominous.
What I got from it is he says how the first day his kids died because it was just him and his wife up until very recently. He said 11 weeks prior to when they meet him in part 2 is when she died. But I think that his whole arc was that he had failed to protect his kids. So him helping Reagan out with her mission in this movie is him kind of redeeming himself in that way.
Yeah, it kind of feels like the opposite of John Krasinski, because John Krasinski is dead, but his whole family is alive, and so it's kind of like the contrast to that, because he failed. He's literally the only one left, and it's kind of also interesting because, like, my complaints are like, I almost wonder if it's because John Krasinski wasn't selfish at all. He was only thinking about his family, that there wasn't more defense there, because, like, when you look at his base, it's way more armed out. Yeah. Like, that was, like, the thing I was thinking about, even with, like, the bottle traps, like, going back to what I was talking about in the first episode, is, like, there's so much better little things they do with sound in this movie that I'm like, that makes more sense. Or even, like, in the train yard when they can actually talk to each other because they're, like, underground. Yeah. And different things like that. And so I think maybe that is just intentional, just to show, like, how different they were in different ways. Like, he was better and more safe, but at the same time, he got his family. Like, his family isn't around anymore. Whereas John Krasinski isn't around anymore, but his family is.
He also seemed to, like, the base in the first movie, Lee's base, the Abbott's house, their farm, like, that's set up well to deal with the world they're in as far as the monsters go. But as far as other people go, they didn't really have anything in place. Like, the bottle traps, the bear trap, that's meant to keep other people out of his base. So he's defending both from other people in this world and the monsters, which is another difference between them.
Yeah. I think it's cool too that it shows, like, even like what you're saying, like, he even says it in the movie, like, I've seen the people out there, they're not worth saving, they're not worth even trying to, like, deal with, which probably goes into, like, he's probably had encounters with those, whether they be cannibals, cultists, whatever they are, people before that were on the docks. And another little tidbit that I think was really cool too is that, like, they really had no way of knowing that it was each other that were lighting those fires, but they still did it every night just to, like, ensure that, like, hey, we're both still alive and doing fine. And it's also cool the fact that they knew, like, hey, we don't know what's out there, but we're gonna go out there and see whatever was on the other end of that fire.
Yeah, that's cool that there really was no reason to do that other than for them to just know they're not alone. Which I'm sure goes a long way for your mental health, especially for Emmett, for him being on his own now. I'm sure that went a long way for him actually being able to survive in this world, knowing that there was other people kind of nearby that were also surviving. Because he's in that point where, like, what does he have to live for? Like, he's trying to survive, but he gets to that point of, like, why?
Right. Yeah, well, so that's, I guess my next question is, do you think that his wife actually had died 11 weeks prior? Because, like, in that scene, that was his wife that he stumbles across, right? That
was my understanding. Yeah,
she seems like she's been decaying a lot longer, because it looks like it's been.
It may have been, like, he might have been mentally sick from all this stuff that happened. Like, maybe we find out that he meant that, like, he let the memory of her die 11 weeks ago or something. It was my understanding that body that the son comes across upstairs in the factory was her. Because if it wasn't her, what was the point of that scene?
Yeah. I feel like
another thing, actually, an exact same point, is there were, like, spots made up there for kids in the factory, or like, there was that bed. So I just feel like there's more about his character we haven't learned, and he's still alive. So I'm assuming if there's a third one, there probably will be, that he'll be in that, and I'm sure that we'll learn more about him.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? I mean, that place was definitely big enough that he could have had more people even there or something at one point. like there's really no way of justifying exactly what caused him to lose hope in humanity. I mean, maybe he had more people there and he got betrayed. There's really no way of knowing. And so, I mean, like this movie shed light on that. Just like you said, if there's a third movie, I'd imagine he'd be in it and he'd probably be a big part of it. So maybe they'll shed more light on his backstory if there is a third one. So, which I imagine there will be. This led on like way more of like a weirder cliffhanger for there not to be than the first.
I feel like this could end on 3 and it could be a really solid trilogy that's just left at that. Kind of like the new Planet of the Apes movies.
Yeah.
Because I know that from a very bird's eye view, the plots, the structure of these 2 movies are similar. It kind of ends in a very similar way. But if you really think about it, it's actually a lot different. At the end of the first one, they had just lost their dad and husband. They had lost their home. They have that new baby. And they were kind of just like desperate to find something or someone. And now here, they're going to bring Evelyn and the baby and the son back to that island, presumably. And they have a space they know is safe. That puts them in a much different spot to focus the third movie on, like finding a way to make this transmission like cover a wider range of land, and kind of save more people.
You talking about it kind of sparked in me what I disliked about it. So my biggest complaint is at the end of the first one, it ends off with that scene with all of them charging in,
which isn't paid off on. Which is weird.
Nothing happens with it. They just go
when
out.
I started watching too, I was like, am I misremembering? I swear there was like half a dozen of them closing in on them.
It ends with like a bunch of them coming in, and so like that leaves you with like maybe there could be another one, or maybe this is just how it ends.
It's also possible they just walked away on their sand trail, I guess, right?
I guess, but wouldn't you think they'd still be around? Like it kind of doesn't lead that. It also never shows really like and I get why they don't want the whole movie to be about them with that journey there, but the journey there was probably very rigorous, especially with the baby. Like, how did they make it there without making any sound at all? Especially
when we see them come to the end of their trail with the sand, they have to start stepping on sticks and leaves. And like, I don't know if you just rewatched part 1, the scene in 1 where there's that raccoon, who's like walking, and then there's the monster's hand just like.
Right. Well, I mean, like there's even signs like when things are more quiet than normal, you're gonna hear more. Like the most quiet room in the world, you can actually hear like your heartbeat. You can hear your blood flow. You can hear all that stuff.
I don't want to hear.
No, I would never want to hear that. It would be super weird. But like, so with there not being any sound in the world, you're just out in the middle of nowhere. There's no cars. There's no nothing. Things are quiet, like really quiet. And so I feel like those noises that you make, like what you're talking about, like stepping on twigs, stepping on, leaves, stepping on those different things, you're going to hear that a lot better. Yeah. So I think that's just my biggest complaint. But again, I understand they don't have the time to develop that because they're just trying to go from point A to point B, which is part of what I really like about the movie is they don't worry about spending time on all of this nonsense over here because what it's about is this chunk right here. They just want to focus on the best parts. And I think that's special compared to a lot of movies because a lot of movies spend so much time on stuff that just doesn't matter.
Yeah, for sure. I like alien movies, zombie movies, apocalypse movies, but the part that I like is watching the deterioration of normal life. And I actually like that we don't really get a lot of that in either of these movies. We have the one scene at the front where we see day 1. We don't see day 2 or anything like that until almost day 500, but we get more hints in this of the stuff like the National Guard realized that these things can't swim, so they started to load boats and stuff like that. Hey, that's so cool. Like, it makes sense the way these things look. How would they swim with those big like spider legs? Right. But you didn't think about that until this movie. So it's just cool how we get this stuff in like little bite-sized pieces.
Well, that also made me think too, like, you think about like stuff like Fallout, where it's like you look around in the world of Fallout, and that is only in the United States. The world isn't like that. The rest of the world is normal. So like make it at least begs me to ask the question of, is the rest of the world like that then?
Yeah.
Are places like Australia or UK, where they have oceans beneath them, dealing with the same thing that the US is?
You're right. Looks like the UK, or like places in the Caribbean or Southeast Asia, where there's like more smaller islands. If these things can't swim, because we know at the start of this movie there's the news about Shanghai, which is presumably from these monsters. Then we see in the first movie in his basement there's a headline about a meteor hitting Mexico, but that also doesn't really add up.
I don't even remember that actually.
Yeah, it said meteor hits Mexico with the force of a nuke, but that doesn't make sense, because we see how fast everything goes to crap in this movie.
Yeah, I mean, they came in on a meteor, so maybe then it is the rest of the world is being hit with them.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where I feel like if you really pay attention to the little details, you might be able to see it, but like, it just still is interesting to see, because like there's for sure probably somewhere out there where there's a bigger amount of people that have not been unscathed by these things, right? Like,
yeah, because
surely there's an island out there.
You saying that is making me think there had to have been many meteors, because do we know for sure where this movie takes place?
No, I've been wondering
the
that
state
myself.
But like it's
somewhere Midwest. Probably,
it's definitely
right?
Midwest, Northeast, Eastern coast of the U.S. just because of the climate and the geography.
They don't have Southern accents. Otherwise, I would think it would be more South.
It has very much Northeast, New England, Midwest, American town vibes.
Maybe Maine.
Yeah, like Maine, stuff like Maine.
Because you got to think too, like Vermont. Yeah,
Vermont.
Small towns too. Because you don't even have that really here that much.
No, here in Michigan, no, we don't. Towns like what we're in that, there's not many of those.
Even like places like Stockbridge and stuff have McDonald's and stuff like that, where it's like very,
McDonald's,
very,
man.
Very.
But my point that I was making is, there's the article about the meteor hitting Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
But then we see a meteor coming down in this, and it's definitely not going to land in Mexico. It's already way too low. We already know stuff happened in Shanghai. We know someone had a chance to print papers about Mexico, and there was the one in the first movie where... Okay, tell me this is a Quiet Place thing, where there's a newspaper headline that says, "Sound is the key," or something like that. Was that this movie, or was that The Silence on Netflix? Because that's the exact same.
I think there
premise,
is something in the beginning.
It's something like, it was a Quiet Place, right?
So that's kind of the thing that I'm wondering about, though, is like, for how quick everything is.
But that's what I'm saying, is like, that makes sense if there was multiple meteors and like these things just stayed in like the area kind of where their meteor landed. There had to have been multiple.
That leads to add the question, though, because I know we talked about before that John Krasinski only thinks there's so many, but
which he was super wrong about, which we also see. He thinks there's like 4 in the area around them.
Yeah, I guess that could still be right, though, because there's not really not any real reason to believe there's any more in the beginning.
And I guess we don't really know what he means by like nearby. Like, I'm sure the fireworks brought in a lot more with how loud those would have been in comparison to everything else.
It's too hard to argue this when you don't know the whole grand scale of things, because we still don't know how much. We still don't know everything they know. We still don't know where this led from. We still don't know. I mean, even if they do know, because it's like one of those things, like, he doesn't really question the fact that there's a meteor right before. Has there been weird things before this? Are other areas dealing with weird stuff now? Like,
yeah, besides the Shanghai thing, I don't think so.
Like, what's the current climate of the U.S.? What's the current climate of the other, like, the UN? Like, what are all the other countries dealing with? What is the United States dealing with? Like, we don't know what's going on in that state right yet, because there is no background. There is no montage of what is going on to begin with, which is still interesting, but still begs a lot of questions and leads to like more things that could be kind of plot holes, because it's like you pick on little things, but you have no idea if that's already known fact or if that's not. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
there's really no way of knowing because we don't know the entire scope of things.
Part of that was where I get the vibe, I don't know, that Cillian Murphy's character, that he has killed these things before, but that he just didn't see them be killed like the way that they kill it with the amplifier and the microphone. But like, I don't know that for sure. Maybe he's never seen these things be killed. So we see they can't be blown up, they can't be shot unless they open up their ears.
Yeah, I was gonna say they definitely can't be killed unless they.
But we also do see them be killed without the microphone thing when she tries to blow the one up, and then she has this sprinkler and it's trying to hear where she's at, so its ears are a little bit open, and she shoots it through the head there.
I think they have armor on the outside, and the only way that you can get them to expose their weak part is when you have something in their ear. Like, I think whenever they open up, I think that's when their weak spots are exposed. Because I think otherwise you can't. Because in the beginning, if you recall, there's the part where the officer is like right in the beginning when he has the shotgun, he's trying to shoot him, and nothing's happening at all. Like, it just ends up killing him.
Right. So like, did any of these characters prior to these two movies, had they seen these things be killed before? Like, that's what I'm wondering.
I'm sure somewhere, but I'm
right. But
at
like,
the same
but
time,
like
I don't think any of these characters. No, I don't think.
Because
like
these
characters
you watching that one scene through the sniper scope of Emmett, I got the vibe that he was thinking like, wow, they know how to kill these things. That's kind of what I thought. But then later on, I kind of thought, no, I think he's killed these things before. I just never seen it be done like that.
Could be. I mean, either way, it's something like, even if he has seen it, he probably doesn't know that sound is their weakness.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's hard really to debate on this movie because, like I said before, there's just so little that we continue to know, you know. But I think now that we've kind of gone down this rabbit hole of talking about some of the different parts of the movie, I've kind of discussed some of the complaints I've had. It is really cool. It is really nice to talk about.
Do you want to talk about some of the more visual stuff?
Yeah, we could.
I know you had mentioned that last night that you liked a lot of how it was shot.
About like what I was saying last night, and then what I said earlier in the first episode, is it's a very visual movie. And this movie has a lot more dialogue, like way more dialogue than the first movie, obviously, because you also have the interesting point that that family knows how to sign because they have a deaf daughter, but which is something I didn't really know till later on in the movie. Like, I guess that was something I kind of forgot to touch on from the first episode, that daughter's deaf until later on, until I see the actual hearing aid. I never realized that the first time I saw it.
It's cool, because in that world, there would be no reason for that to be made known.
You're right. And so I never thought, what is someone else dealing like that doesn't know how to sign, doesn't know how to do this? Like, how was he communicating with his family? How was he doing all this stuff? And so it's kind of like interesting to see, like, there's a lot of points he has to talk. There's no way of getting around it. Like, he just has to whisper because how else is he going to know? And so it's kind of like funny in the one scene when like the only word he really knows is dive, because talks about it earlier on in the movie, in the beginning of it, and ends up telling her, like, it's kind of one of those stupid things where it's like, yeah, sure, you would, that would be the only word that you would know, but at the same time, it's just kind of like, whatever, I'm not going to complain about that. But visually, there's a few scenes I really, really like how it's shot, and most of it is in the later half when they're on that island. The scene I think that I like the most is sort of when Cillian Murphy's character Emmett feels really bad about everything that's kind of happened, and he kind of walks out to the beach, and I'm assuming he's probably thinking about his family, thinking about everything that's happened, and like just sort of thinking like he thought there was nowhere better to go. In reality, like, it was probably pretty simple for him to try to get a boat and to drive out here, and he probably
I had the same
saved his
thought
family.
of like how horrible that must have felt, that he was trying to save his wife to bring her somewhere where she could be in pain safely, and how if he had known he could have gotten her to safety within a day's travel time, then like he would have obviously done that, but he didn't. That just kind of sucks for him.
I just think that aspect, like that whole scene, like there's no it's very imperfect too in the way that it's shot. Like you can see it move a lot. You can see it kind of move up and down to like refocus on him and make sure that he doesn't have like too much head space at the top, but not too little. Like there's a few points I looked and it kind of goes like up and down. And I just like that it's just the full like scope around him. And even though there's imperfections in that, it kind of like still, it kind of shows the full scale of like his emotion, everything he's feeling in that moment. And so like it's kind of like one of those little things where it's like a little bit more of an artistic piece, but I still really like it. It still really makes you feel for the character. I think Cillian Murphy is of the level of Emily Blunt, like what we were talking about in the first episode, where without very little dialogue, without even expressing very much, without being able to talk very much, he's able to express a lot.
For sure, yeah.
And cool little tidbit. The way that he was offered it was because him, John Krasinski and Emily Blunt binged, what is that show called? Peaky Blinders on Netflix, and he liked his character in the show so much that he offered the role to him, and he ended up accepting, which is really cool because Cillian Murphy has not gotten enough recognition for like his acting ability. Like he's so great in everything he is in.
He's good.
He's so good in everything he's in, and the only thing he really plays a main character in is Peaky Blinders, which that in itself does not get enough recognition for how good it is. But
and 28 Days Later. Too.
Yeah, I've not seen 28 Days Later. I need to watch it still because I've heard a lot about it. But
yeah, it's a pretty good zombie movie. Honestly.
Yeah,
it's different.
I'm sure we'll do an episode on it at one point. But yeah, this movie, all in all, was good. I have a lot more things to say that I like about it than complaints about it. And just like any movie that's going to try something new, you're always going to have little things about it that you'll dislike. But overall, you're proud about it doing the new thing. Like, because realistically, I would way rather this movie be a thing than not be a thing.
Right.
So despite whatever little complaints, whatever little things I pick out of it, I'm so happy that it was made and that it came out.
Yeah, me too. I was definitely not expecting a sequel to that movie. Like, the way it ended, the first one, maybe that was dumb to not expect that, but I kind of just took it as, oh, they know how to fight these things now, so they're going to be okay together. So I feel like they could have gotten away with not making a sequel. But I also think that I'm happy they did, because I feel like this is one of the most effective sequels where it just expands upon every single facet of the first one and makes it better.
The way I took it, honestly, was you've seen the movie Life, right?
Yeah.
I kind of took it as that, where it's just like, oh, they're effed. Like, what are they going to do?
They know how to kill it. That's what they're going to do. They're going to kill him.
Yeah, it was just one of those things, though, where it's like, how, though? How are they going to kill it? Like, they killed one of them really quickly, but like, do they have enough ammo to kill like 12 of those things?
Right.
Which is another one of those things where it's like, why do they not show them doing anything about it? Why are they just gone? But it's whatever. I mean, I feel like almost like he maybe ended it on that, in the thought of maybe, hey, maybe this never gets another thing. Maybe this is a good ending if it does. Because I mean, it definitely ended in still a way that's like, you don't really know. Maybe did they make it out? Maybe they didn't. I don't know. Like,
it makes sense to me that they just slipped out as they were. No, that doesn't make sense, because at the beginning they are at their house for a bit. Right. I don't know. Maybe we missed a huge fight where they just kill all of them. Then, you know.
I don't think so, because it just shows them leaving and there's nothing there.
I don't know. I'm not.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm not a scientist.
Again, that's my only real complaint with a plot.
Every movie's gonna have that. Like, you can't think of everything, right?
Well, I mean, how are they gonna do like a badass like action scene like that? Like, clearly they don't have enough ammo to probably fight those things. How is Emily Blunt gonna fight those things when she's just
definitely been more dumb
birth?
If we saw them just like mowing through a pack of these things. That's not what I was saying I wanted, but I don't know.
It definitely would have been more stupid and probably had more complaints if we'd seen them actually fighting the things. So,
but I liked in this movie too, just the whole premise that these things can't swim. That when then they find the community living on that island where the broadcast is from, and how it seems. Like, I leaned over to you and I said, "This is like the others in Lost."
Yeah.
Because it has like those exact same vibes where like you're in a hostile place, but then you just happen upon this little village that seems perfect.
Right.
So you're wondering like what the catch is. Like, are these guys cannibals? Are these guys? Is this some sort of weird cult?
I feel like this is kind of like the final talking point because I said I want to kind of leave this till later. Yeah. They don't do that. There's never any catch, and I really liked that. I really liked it because the entire time, like, you said that, I'm like, okay, yeah, what's the catch going to be? What's going to happen?
Too, when he hears like that the noise on the beach where it's like boom, 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 and I was like, is this like a weird jail cell where they're like,
are they cannibals?
Imprisoning people
is there someone
to
there
eat or something weird like that?
Like,
but then he just sees that it's the boat from the dock, and he knows there was a monster on that boat, so he knows that there's one probably on that island now.
And I know we're like joking about it, like yesterday I was joking about like the scene when he's like running, but I really like that scene. That scene's very tense. It's probably the most scary scene of the whole movie.
It's such a tough spot. It's like, well, what do you do? Like,
because you have everyone here living like
he didn't want to scream, but also he's got to warn these people. I don't know.
It's one of those things too where it's like people have almost gone back to the old ways of living where it's like, we don't have to be worried. We're fine. We're out here in the middle. There's no way that this could ever happen. So far to the point that they're so like, that was another thing I kind of thought about. They're so like in like La La Land that they're like, they don't even question these new people that come here. They literally gone back to the old ways of living that they don't even question them.
They weren't.
They just immediately accept them like, hey, you're people. Yeah, we'll take you in. And so it's like interesting to see because it's like humans are obviously good at core. Yeah. They're good people. But once it's like a zombie movie, you're always expecting the worst of people. You're always expecting that there's going to be some sort of catch. And that's why it's interesting to see like real life, though, if people didn't have to deal with this stuff, if they went to an area where they could just forget about it and live their normal lives as normal as they could be, they would never think about it. They would never grow to be like that.
Right. Because based on the monologue of the one guy who lived at the village who was talking to Emmett when they got there, is like they learned about the boats being safe pretty early on. So it's presumably those people all got there within the first day or two of this thing happening. So they wouldn't have had time to see the weird groups of thieves and bandits that were doing stuff to people on the mainland because they have lived out in this safe spot this whole time.
And even if so, like, I don't imagine there's probably a lot of those people. Like, they might band together, like whatever that weird group was on the dock. It's really hard to know entirely without knowing the full scope of things, without seeing it and all that, which we haven't. I don't think there was a lot of bandits or things like that. I'm sure there's little things here and there, like what was on the dock, like whatever those weird people were. Yeah. Something else that I just thought of that I wanted to touch on was like with what we talked about in the first episode with like John Krasinski dying and with Lee dying in the first movie. The thing that like also plays against how he could have easily not died was what Emmett does on the dock there. Like, he literally just dodges the thing. Because there's literally the part where he like holds the guy there until he knows he's going to die from the thing and then just jumps into the water. Yeah. So it's like you could have just screamed, literally jumped out of the way.
There's a... You know what I mean? Like,
and it plays sort of to that. But I still really liked how that scene was done. That was, again, that dock scene is the coolest scene of the whole movie, I think, personally.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was something that I wouldn't have imagined. Just like the thing charging down the dock.
Yeah. But again, to go back to the island scene, again, it's a very tense scene when he's like running through and trying to stop everyone because everyone no one's had to deal with it really. Again, going back to it, no one's really had to probably deal with it very much.
And they're lighting fires and they're talking and laughing, they're cooking, they're getting their water from the well. Rip that guy.
I definitely think it ends on an interesting note when you don't see them all together. Like, they're all very far away from each other. Because, like, you have the son, the baby, and the Emily Blunt's character.
Evelyn, yep.
All together in the spot that they left originally. And then you have Emmett and you have, what was the daughter's name again?
Sorry?
What was the daughter's name again in the movie?
Reagan.
Reagan. So you have Reagan and Emmett together on that island, obviously.
Yep.
And I'm assuming they're probably going to go back there. I
assume we pick up the third movie where they're all back together on the island, and they're trying to find a way to make more places safe through these broadcasting things.
Yeah. I feel like it's really hard to know where they'll pick up from the third movie, because they could just pick up right where
there was
left off.
zero time that passed between 1 and 2.
Right. I almost feel like they'll probably do the same thing, seeing as how the first and second movie did a lot of the same things. And I feel like we could even see Emmett's backstory, probably, if he continues to be a main character. And I feel like maybe even... So here's another thing I want to ask you about real quickly, just before we kind of wrap this up, is I think... Did it seem like to you, at least, that the kids in the beginning seemed like they were young, and then again when it cut back from the second, like from the day one to then later on, it seemed like they were older? Like, did it almost seem like it could have been filmed from the first movie's era? Because when I was seeing it, it definitely seemed like they looked a lot older from the very first scene, from day one to then cutting right after the end of the first movie.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know if that was some sort of stuff with CGI or anything like that.
Yeah, or if they just actually filmed that beforehand.
Because I actually brought this up to you before we saw the movie, how the youngest boy that dies in the first movie, how like
it would have had to be a different...
Yeah, like I was like, how is he going to be in the flashback in this? Because at that age, there's only 2 years between when the movies were made, but even that long for a kid that's that age, he'll look a lot different. Mm-hmm. And in this, they kind of just show him from like the back or the side. I was like, okay, that's how they're gonna do it. But then it shows him just normally, like when he's in the car.
I still had no idea though if it was him or not.
Yeah,
same actor or not.
And you just rewatched the movie prior to seeing 2. I didn't.
Yeah.
So, and for me, I was like, he definitely.
They don't really show him very much in the first movie though. It's really only a few scenes.
I don't know. I guess they could have just like put a wig that looks like the original kid on another little boy.
The kids are so that young like that, they all kind of look the same.
It's not a huge deal, especially since there was some time that would have passed in the movie from that flashback to when the kid that ends up being killed. But
yeah, that's true. I never thought about that.
Yeah, they definitely look. It could have been just something like what they did with Chris Evans in the first Avenger. How at the start he's that super small and scrawny.
Either way, they did it well enough that it didn't seem weird. Because I mean, even that movie at the time, it still was weird when they were doing it. Like, I could definitely tell as a kid, I was like, that's not normal looking. But like in this movie, I had no way of telling really if it was them or if it was de-aging or if
that's
it was
definitely something I want to look into.
Yeah,
as far as how they did parts of the movie like that. But
they definitely did a great job. I liked, again, the island scenes were cool. I'd say that was probably second to the dock scene.
In that train too was cool. We talked about that in the train car.
Yeah,
where she shoots but doesn't quite kill it, and that's when Emmett gets there. And he has to kill the thing for her.
Yeah, there's a few different scenes like that where I was sort of like sitting there and kind of thinking about the complexity of like what had to be thought about before actually filming this scene and all that. And I definitely think the island, the train car, and the dock scene were very, very well thought out, very well acted, and very well sort of can't really think of the word, but the composition of the shots, were good, but they hit all the points they were trying to hit. Basically, they did really good on setting out to achieve something, and they did achieve it.
Right. I know you said you had a couple complaints, which we can get to in a second, but the last thing that I wanted to say,
basically, I think we touched on that earlier.
Yeah, I just didn't know if you had anything more, but if not, I just wanted to bring up, I thought that the furnace chamber in the factory was cool, how it was completely soundproof, but you only had so much time to be in there with the door being shut because you would be out of air.
I did wonder about that at first. I was like, why are they timing themselves?
I thought like maybe he must have just timed how long he has in there to breathe, which we learned that is the case.
Yeah. I didn't think about it at first that like if you had that shut off, it would eventually become airtight. And
presumably that's where he brought his wife, so that because he said she was sick, so she was probably like crying out in pain. So I'm assuming that's why they were there, so that he could put her in there, so she could have those moments where she can just be in pain and be safe.
Yeah. See, it's there's a lot of questions still we have, and I think they did a good job, and I'm hoping that they can kind of wrap it up with 3. I really hope there's not some sort of like cinematic universe that they try to do. Who knows? Yeah, so many studios want to offer people money.
There is a difference between a cinematic universe and having a more anthology series where we would just follow a different character or characters in this world that don't necessarily connect back to each other.
I just don't really care to see what this whole universe has to offer.
Yeah.
I just kind of want to see, like I said before, I just hope that they restore. What's that?
It's kind of like The Last of Us Part 2, kind of in that way. How
it does a little bit, yeah.
Where I still of the same kind feelings, honestly.
I understand. Yeah, there was a few different parts with Emmett and Reagan where I felt like if Last of Us the series could emulate it, it would be.
It felt very The Road inspired. I'm sure you've heard of The Road.
Yeah, I've never seen it.
That's a big inspiration for The Last of Us. I'm pretty sure is what Neil Druckmann has said. It's a book. It also has a movie, but I don't know if
I think the movie's pretty. I think it's like a cult classic, so maybe I'll watch that then.
Yeah, it's
watch it one of these days.
Same kind of type of genre thing.
Yeah,
but yeah, that's a Fine Place Part 2.
Yeah, I don't think there's really anything else I have to touch on complaint wise. I'm pretty sure I touched on everything. It's very minor stuff.
Now I know you just saw Part 2, but which one do you like more as of today?
It's hard to say. I think it's always going to be tough for the second one to ever top the first one. You know, like I think that's just always the case. I think most movies, when it's a brand new series, you know, you think of like The Matrix or, you know, I can't think of any.
There's a lot of series that go on too long and end up getting worse.
Yeah, I think anything that is like a new series ends up having
especially a horror series. It's really rare that a movie in this genre has successful sequels.
Yeah,
like Alien did it with Aliens, but like Halloween, like people think 2 and 3 are okay, but like they're nowhere near the first one.
Good. Yeah, I definitely think what I would liken it to, actually, funny enough, is the J.J. Abrams Star Trek movies, where the first one was really good and the second one was still really good. I'm hoping they don't mimic the third one, where the third one just sucks.
Yeah.
But like I think about those movies, like the first one was really good, and I honestly think overall I like the second one more. And I want to say that I like the second one more now, but I almost feel like it could just be because it's more new to me. So I don't think I can give a full consensus until I've seen the movie probably once or twice more and to give more time to think about it. But there's definitely parts of it that I like a lot more. I just like Emmett's character a lot. Yeah. I think Cillian Murphy does a really good job of playing it. And I think this is like the first time Cillian Murphy's really had an opportunity to play a character like more in the spotlight and more of just a different role than he typically plays. And so it really makes me happy to see not only the character be played well, but also see him as an actor be able to get a spot that he hasn't typically gotten before. So Quiet Place 2, I have no real big complaints about yet. I really like it. I might have more as the weeks go on, but
I think I like it more than the first one.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too, but again, like I said, I probably won't know until a little bit later.
But I also like Terminator 1 more than 2, so what do I know?
Yeah. I guess you're just trash.
Guess so.
Doc. Well,
all right.
This has been EntertainGents.
Yep, episode 2 in the books.
Yeah. Maybe we'll have episode 3. I don't know.
Well, I'll have to upload.
I don't even know. Like
that special that we shot with our friends.
Yeah, I don't even know though. Like, will we do it? Will we want? I don't know.
Who knows, right?
Yeah.
And we're definitely gonna have a format. covering more movies, shows, games, doing different kinds of stuff, video essays, more things closer to Let's Plays, retrospective, stuff like that. Just gonna have fun with it, see what happens, see where it goes, just kind of get better at doing all this stuff because it's what we like doing. So, yeah, this has been episode 2 of EntertainGents.
Maybe. I don't even know.
Who knows what episode this is. Until next time.
Maybe. It just ends.